this on film?
I'd simply have to say that this is the worst thing that I've seen happen in June, Alabama out of my court. Finally, here come this thing out right out the southwest, just roaring and tearing and ripping like you never heard. 9 freight trains, you know, coming right at me, and I said, there it is. I said, son, run. Go get in the hole. Run for the hole. And he did, and my son-in-law ran. And I watched it, and I ran a little slower than them, and I watched this, and I stood in the cellar door to see what it was doing. And finally I got scared and slammed the cellar door shut, afraid it was going to blow something through it, you know, and ran me. And I sat there, man, and it shook the whole cell, the concrete cellar that we were in, you know, complete.
After the storm was over and you came back to your home, what was your reaction?
Chaos, disbelief, incredibility. I couldn't understand, you know. People were in the streets, incoherent, not knowing what they were saying, walking up and down, wringing their hands. My dad's dead, my mother's dead. I don't know where my home is. Where's my son? You know, that kind of stuff. Worst thing I ever known.
And of course, we was watching the notices on TV, you know, storm warnings. But I heard it coming, but it didn't sound too bad. But just like you pop your finger, everything was gone just like that. Ooh, just that quick.
Where were you when it struck?
We was in the living room, the TV, and it didn't hurt it a bit. My brother just now loaded it. Now, I'd got in here, and I don't know how I come out alive. I was going to crawl on this bed. Thought my wife was right behind me. I always read to crawl under a bed. I don't know why. And I was trying to get under it, and I was right there kneeling down, my head on this old bed. And there's 2 by 4s and 2 by 6s, and everything just laying all by me, everywhere, and never one of them touched me. I don't get it.
Where's your wife now?
she's out there in the car somewhere. She got hurt pretty bad. She's blue all over and had thick stitches in her head. Big hole up here. I don't know how many stitches. They took ambulance, took us to Winfield, the hospital.
Mrs. Smith, do you feel like you got enough warning before the storm struck?
Yeah, but there wasn't no place to go nowhere, with no storm cellar and nothing. Just like those poor people over there, you see, just green and buried, I reckon. I don't know.
Where are you heading for now? Notice you're packing your
I'm
truck.
going to go store some furniture for my children here in a friend's home.
Do you plan to stay here in Gwynn?
Yes, we will stay.
And what are your plans? Are you going to build?
We'll rebuild. Indeed, we will. This is not complete and final. It's bad, but it's not the ultimate thing. We'll come back. We always have. We've been through hard times before.
Well, I was asleep. I was already going to bed. And the house began to shaking and woke me up. And about that time, the glass was sliding and raining on me, so I rolled off the bed under the bed.
Now, a lot of people were hurt. You both seem like you're unscratched. How come?
Well, I've got a few scratches around on my arms and on my legs. My feet were pinned under that cabinet in there, and I just kept pulling until I finally got out and began hunting for Doyle. I didn't know what, maybe he was killed or what had happened to him, and I began hunting for him.
Well, we had just came home from church, and we thought we would run to a friend's house to a storm cellar. My husband didn't have a coat. He ran in to get a coat, and I could hear the storm coming. And I told him we didn't have time to let's run to the center of the house. That's where everybody says to get in a storm. So we ran to sit down by the deep freeze in the dining room. And the only thing that saved us was the wall fell over on the deep freeze.
It was about 9 o'clock last night in this city of Gwynn in Marion County when residents in this section were overtaken by the storm. It moved out of this section, moved across into the northeast, taking everything in the path as it moved in that direction.
At the same time, now that I look back on it, it's a very difficult role. It's about as difficult as a question. And I say that because when you're an administrator in SGA or an executive officer, at the same time you're dealing with the rest of the campus, and that means the predominantly white sector of the campus. It's difficult because you're trying to relay the sentiments of, the black students from your own perspective, and at the same time you're trying to understand the ideas and the sentiments of the majority of the campus. And somewhere you have to constantly try and work within a medium.
Is it an identity problem? Do you find yourself more worried about the black participation in black events or black integration into the rest of the community?
I don't think it's so much of an identity problem, and that's basically because of the people that you work with. And I say that because if there's a conflict between, black and white, there's an issue. I think the people up here are intelligent and capable enough of taking stands, but at the same time not hindering our working relationship, as was shown recently in,
Well, getting into that, just very briefly, do you have a problem with trying to represent blacks at the same time you're representing whites, and where do those philosophies clash?
Last week was the first time that they ever clashed for me. And because On one end, I saw maybe 13,000 students. On this end, I saw 1,200 students. And I was between them. And for 5 minutes, I was on this side. And for 10 minutes, I was on this side. And that was the only way that I could, draw some type of working plan up. And that was only successful with the understanding of Dale and Sylvester Wilson, the Afro president. And without that being possible, it would have totally, been a complete failure.
And like it before, so you can say this is my support for my own idea. Yeah, of course you can have it.
Well, I did the first thing. I asked what the government was, so I'm ready to do something on my own. I'm ready to make that step. I think maybe mine was a personal confession that, I rejected.
Dale, what do you see as the major reason for the election of Sylvester Jones as vice president?
I think the major reason that Sylvester Jones was elected vice president is that he just is a very well qualified individual, and certainly has impressed the students here at the university with his sincerity toward working hard with student government and the other campus groups that he's worked with while he's been here at the University of Alabama, and they were just very impressed with Sylvester Jones as an individual and a hard worker.
Have we reached the point at the university at which a person can be elected on the basis of that without regard to race or color?
I think we most definitely have. I've seen increased involvement by not only blacks but women and other minority groups on campus since I've been here, and I feel like that now people look more toward the qualifications of the individual than they do what color he is or what sex they are.
We've only been an integrated campus now for about 10 years. We've come a long way in that period of time. We have now, I think, a large enough population of blacks to have achieved what you might call critical mass. There are about 1,200 blacks on campus, and with this number also has come diversity. There's a great deal of diversity of opinion and attitude within the black student population. And this gives a much more mature kind of student body. There is no longer the possibility of saying the black students want this or the black students think this way. You'll have to say this particular black student thinks this way, but this one may think very differently, and his wishes and his interests might be quite different too. I told someone recently, I think the diversity within the black population on campus is broad enough now so that there's more difference between one group of blacks and another group of blacks than between certain groups of blacks and certain groups of whites on campus.
Does this break down the cohesiveness among blacks as a whole?
It does to some extent, yes. On the other hand, there is still a strong element of this identity problem that you mentioned, so that when something appears to be a crisis, and if there is the perception that the university itself is acting in a racist capacity, then the blacks tend to cohere again. This tends to draw them back together. Adversity always brings about cohesion with any kind of population. Watch what war does to the population of the United States. You suddenly lose all the kinds of diverse interests and everybody pulls together.
I don't think it's a matter of acceptance. I think the important thing is respect. The average black student doesn't care whether the white student accepts him. I think the only thing he's asking is respect. And I think with a lot of students working in that same frame of reference, both white and black, that's all that's important. And I think respect is a preliminary for acceptance, because you have to respect the differences in the individuals, me being black and Dale being white, in order to accept each other.
Do you think that there is significant amounts of respect here on the University of Alabama, one race for the other, that wasn't here 5 years ago, 4 years ago?
Yes, I think so, but at the same time, you have to ask yourself, is it socially acceptable to be more respectful now, or is it the thing to do, or does everybody do it? only to keep, peace.
Or is it patronizing?
Yeah,
I guess that creates a problem.
it does.
Do you get funny looks from people when you go to national conferences and the like, saying that, yes, I'm the student body president, vice president, and yes, I was elected by the entire student body, of which 90%.
About the third party. As individual candidates are concerned, I would say that I don't comment on any one of them. I'm going to run cautiously myself. I do know that there are many members in the Democratic hierarchy in the sense of those in positions of political leadership, for some reason or other, don't like our movement. They like our movement, they take our position sometimes, but somebody how I don't like George Wallace, and I don't know why that is. I just never have asked them their advice about many things, probably. But I don't think there is any threat to the great middle class of this country, because there are more of them, and they're going to win, and they're going to have their way. And I would say the threat is not whether you're threatening George Wallace, it's whether or not this movement of middle class Americans is going to be stopped.
Governor?
We have a membership throughout the United States made up of union members from various unions across the country. And we ran a poll in May of 1975 as to the choice of the candidates that they would choose for 1976 election. And Governor Wallace won by 97%. So therefore, we named Governor Wallace as honorary hard hat of 1976, and we're presenting him a plaque in this behalf.
Thank you very much.
I have a couple other things here.
We've got one more presentation we'd like to make to the governor.
George, I'll see y'all. Janet. Yeah. Somebody look after that for me. Association of America, I was operated on by a doctor that operated on Lynn.
Well, I'm real happy.
An examination by independent doctors published their report showed that your health is
Head of the neurologic. I am here in Montgomery, Alabama on November 12, 1975 to announce my candidacy for the presidency of the United States to participate in the Democratic primaries of the year 1976. I am entering this campaign for the purpose of winning the nomination and winning the presidency of the United States. I am able to wage an active campaign in these United States and shall do so. I can recall that during the last two elections for the presidency, the Democratic Party, even in spite of majority registration in the country, 2-to-1 membership in governors and members of the Congress, we've lost the two national elections at the presidential election because the ultra-liberals in this country gained advantage of the conventions, and therefore the people in the Democratic Party were forced to vote against instead of for. I'm going to give the people in this country who are Democrats an opportunity to vote for a candidate in November 1976.
Governor, as you're looking into this 1976 presidential election, what do you see? What do you see as on people's minds across the country?
Well, I see that what's on the people's minds is about what's been on the average citizen's mind in Alabama a long time. In 1968, I was called an ultra-radical for talking about welfare giveaways in the urban city-states, the breakdown of law and order. Unless we stopped it, we were going to wind up with it getting so bad that it would be hard to stop in a short period of time. We see that already having approached us. We also talked about foreign aid giveaways to countries who were not friends of ours. We talked about money we gave to the United Nations for them to jump on us. And now we talked about the intolerable tax system in this country that's destroying the middle class. The folks that are making money out here and paying wages and small businessman and farmer, he pays such a high amount of taxes to the federal government, while you have foundations and institutionalized property tax-free, and we find interference in people's lives involving schools and so forth, bureaucracy. I talked about that, and the other day Senator Mansfield of Montana, the Democratic floor leader, said that to the Southern Governors Conference, we are being strangled by bureaucracy. Well, it's costing the taxpayers money. The other night, at the Lieutenant Governor's Conference, I presented Mr. Rockefeller, the Vice President. He made a speech, sounded like it was written in Raymore, Alabama, about welfareism. So that's what's on people's mind, not only economic problems, but inflation and unemployment, and all of these past mistakes in the economy and foreign policy are now facing us in 1975.
Well, let's talk about that foreign policy for just a minute. I take it from what you said about the giveaway to nations who aren't our friends, that you dispute the idea that we can make friends by giving away. Bruno of Newsweek recently, in fact it was in an article published last week, that the United States has made some serious errors in the aid program, in the giveaway program, so to speak, and that we should be fighting petrodollars with agri-dollars, in essence.
Well, I don't know that I told Mr. Bruno exactly that. I discussed the possibility of agriculture being the very bright spot in our economic future insofar as balance of payments are concerned, because that involves the dollar, the soundness of it, the value of it, which affects every citizen. which is very complicated and very few of us understand it. I don't understand it, but very few experts understand it, is that we have a plentiful supply of agricultural products compared to other nations, and that food, wheat, and fiber is the first thing a people must have. And therefore, since we have that, those countries who need that, maybe they ought to treat us fairly if they get that, if they're going to give us, for instance, oil, that is, sell us oil. And that's what I meant was that in the future, there are other countries who have oil that we might need, and we don't need as much oil as they need food, comparatively speaking. Maybe we might be in a position with food the same as they are with oil.
Well, in that case, would you ever advocate more or less extorting oil by use of holding back our food surplus?
Well, I didn't. I just went into it superficially and just said it more studying by those in our government that there are some nations who are using their very precious product to their full advantage. And if they're going to do that, especially when we have given those countries aid in the past, I wonder why we might not be able to sometime in the future use agricultural products in that way. I don't mean to say extort to the sin of make starving anybody, but to those nations who treat us like maybe some of the OPEC countries do.
Do you anticipate that if you are elected president that you will be able to work out a better arrangement with OPEC than has been worked out so far?
I believe that in the next several years, a strong leadership in the government can not only use coal that we have in abundance and go ahead and explore and drill on the outer continental shelf and find enough resources at this time in order to, along with conservation, because we only import about 30% of our oil. It's Western Europe that's completely dependent upon it, that by doing that and going ahead and rushing the Alaskan pipeline, which will eventually, I believe, transport 2 million barrels per day. And the find in the Alaskan fields has been such that there is now the possibility of building the second pipeline next to the first. Now, if this be true, we will be working toward, along with conservation, getting toward the point when we can almost be self-sufficient. And in my judgment then, OPEC is going to be worried about the sale of its oil, because there will be so many places that do not buy it and cannot buy it. And so that's what we must work toward, is not only self-sufficiency. Not that we want to use up all of our resources, but enough in the short run to make OPEC realize that it ought to be purely on a business objective basis. Not only do I dispute the idea we have less friends today than we ever had because nobody respects us. But they respect the Soviet Union. Even you respect them because you're afraid of them.
But the Soviet Union also gives out aid.
They do not give the amount of aid we have given, and they give it in selected places. And then when that aid is rejected for some reason by unfriendly acts, they call it off, and they stop. But you've never seen the Soviet Union give anything. Did it give aid to Western Europe? They might have a short time, many years after the war, but during the war it was this country that gave aid to Western Europe and Japan, which was good. I'm not against that. But the Soviet Union does not involve itself in the kind of aid. It involves itself in an aid for the purpose of putting into political power a group in some country in Africa or Asia that is communist. And this country has never tied in such strings to its foreign aid as that. I don't think we should. But at the same time, I don't think we ought to be giving aid to countries, for instance, who were spitting in our face in Vietnam.